Trump never visited Africa as president and has openly denigrated it.
Using vulgar language, President Trump today questioned why the United States would allow people from Haiti and Africa into the country, describing those places using an expletive while suggesting people from Norway might be more acceptable.
Why do we want these people from, quote, all these shithole countries here?
There is a new kid on the block.
China is Africa's largest trading partner and has already spent billions of dollars.
It's a fantastic example of how Europe has lost the game and has lost its upper hand in Africa. It's game over. Sorry, it's game over.
We have to admit that China is actually taking the lead here, not the West.
But as China and Russia expand their influence in Africa, will Trump reverse this trend? What should Africans expect from a Trump 2.0? Before you think this is just another American story, this might be the most important video you watch this year for Africa's future. Let me tell you why with a story. In 2018 Douala, Cameroon, our family textile business was thriving. 3 factories, 50 workers, exporting traditional prints to America. We were actually living the African dream. Now, if you know about the American dream, think of the African version of the American dream. We were actually living the African dream here in Africa. Then the trade policies changed.
We've been going to the US and you meet very potential buyers, and the first thing you tell them is, I'll ship you a full container duty free. And it's wow, you know? And now it's like that has been scrapped off.
And guess what? This story isn't unique to Cameroon. From Cape Town to Cairo, African businesses are holding your breath right now, wondering what Trump 2.0 means for them. I remember watching my uncle gather our workers, people whose children he had watched grow up, to tell 15 of them they no longer had jobs. Our US exports had simply become too expensive overnight. Now that story is about to become relevant again, and here is why. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal to you a shocking new tariff plan that will change everything for African businesses. I'm also going to reveal to you why some African leaders are secretly celebrating some aid cuts. We are going to see the Russia-America-China triangle that is reshaping the continent. And I will give you 3 specific actions you need to take starting tomorrow. But first, let me show you something shocking about Trump's first term that nobody is talking about. Now let's dive into something that really matters. Every year, Africa exports billions of dollars worth of goods to the United States. From Ghanaian cocoa to Ethiopian coffee, South African diamonds to Nigerian oil. Now here is something that might surprise you. During Donald Trump's first term, he launched something called Prosper Africa. Now this initiative did something unexpected. It pledged to double two-way trade and investment between the US and Africa. Sounds good, right?
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. Every decision on trade, on taxes.
But why would an American first president do this?
The United States of America is going to be very active in Africa as a reaction to China and Russia, and as a reaction to other players.
It wasn't about helping Africa, it was about competing with China. Let's look at the numbers. China-Africa trade in 2023, $282 billion. US-Africa trade in 2023, $83.6 billion. Remember my family business we talked about earlier? We actually benefited from this competition. In 2019, we received American investment through Prosper, which helped us upgrade our machinery. But then, Trump's new proposed policies could change everything.
During his campaign, Trump vowing to set a 10 to 20% tariff on imports from everywhere else.
A universal 10% tariff will be added on all foreign goods. There is also the possibility of ending AGOA altogether. Remember I talked about our family business. Back in January 2020, our family business was actually hit by... Now, most African countries that are in AGOA have not yet been affected. I can give you first-hand experience of what happens when you are in AGOA and then they suddenly cut from you. It's a nightmare. But the good part is we adapted. And I'm going to tell you very soon how that adaptation is going to help Africa. Trump promised during his campaign that he's going to add a 10% tariff on all foreign goods. This actually means that AGOA is going to be automatically cut from Africa. Now, AGOA is actually a policy that was signed between the US and some African countries in order to give an opportunity for African countries to access the American markets. And it actually stated that these African countries could export goods to the US tariff-free. AGOA actually stands for the African Growth and Opportunity Act. And some countries that benefit from AGOA include Angola, Benin, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya. Cameroon was also on this list, but in January 2020, Donald Trump removed Cameroon from this list. It had very great impact, and I'm going to share that experience with you in this video. Now, let me show you what the 10% increase in tariff means in real money. A $100 shipment of Kenyan coffee will now be $110. A 1,000 shipment of Nigerian leather will now be $1,100. And a 10,000 shipment of South African wine will now be $11,000. But here's what keeps me up at night. We have less than 1 year until AGOA expires. That's right, the trade deal that has been supporting African exports since the year 2000. And this could just vanish within a few months when Donald Trump takes office. This is going to lead to thousands of businesses being buried. Thousands of jobs are going to be lost. And there's going to be hardship. The impact is going to be real. It's going to be palpable. But here is where it gets interesting. Some African economists are actually celebrating these changes. Why? The first reason is that they're going to force African businesses to innovate. The second reason is that it's going to push us to strengthen intra-African trade. The third reason is that it could accelerate the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now, I'm going to refer you to our family business. That's why I was saying that I'm going to share with you my personal experience that we had on this same issue. When Cameroon was exempted from the list of African countries that benefited from the AGOA policies, our family business was immediately touched. And we had to innovate, just like what I said. We started selling our products to Ghana and Nigeria. And after reflecting on this, I saw that it was actually favoring intra-African trade. We should remember that intra-African trade right now is one of the lowest intra-regional trades in the whole world. Intra-African trade is at 15%. But even though it is at 15%, it has increased from 2022, where it was at 13%, to last year, that is 2023, at 15%. And when Cameroon was removed from the list, it wasn't only our family business that was touched. Thousands of businesses across Cameroon were also touched. Most of these businesses, instead of giving up, they started doing business with other African countries. And this is actually the inter-African trade that I talked about. So experts are actually seeing this as a positive sign for Africa. And I've just said exactly what happens to our family business back then. Now, let me give you another example. When similar tariffs hit Rwanda's used clothing imports, guess what happened? Local clothing manufacturing grew by up to 300%. I'm not talking about 30%. I'm not talking about 3%. It grew by 300%. They never knew that their local clothing manufacturing industry could actually grow by up to 300% within a very short time. In addition to that, new jobs were created and the export quality improved. So what do you think we should do? A, should Africa fight for AGOA to remain? Or B, should we focus on internal African markets? Or C, look for new trading partners? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. But then, trade is just one piece of the puzzle. Because while we are all focused on tariffs and trade deals, something much bigger is happening with security across the continent. In fact, what I'm about to show you might completely change how you see America's role in Africa. Russia has been making strategic moves in Africa. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, they are all seeing increased Russian military presence. Now, let me share with you something I experienced in northern Cameroon. During Trump's first term, he approved the sale of Tucano jets to Nigeria, which was used to fight against Boko Haram. Now, you should remember that this is something Obama had refused to do. Here is what might surprise you. Some security experts argue that less US involvement could benefit Africa. When Western powers compete here, we often end up as a battleground. Do you remember Libya? Now, speaking about foreign investment, let's talk about something that affects nearly all African countries, from the smallest village to the largest cities in Africa, but not in the way you might think. 3.7 billion, that's the figure. That's how much US aid flowed into Africa this year. Let me break this down for you. 1.2 billion for health programs, $800 million for food security, with $500 million for education initiative, and 1.2 billion for various development projects. But here is what keeps me up at night. During his first term, Trump tried to slash aid to Africa multiple times. And now that Congress is dominated by the Republicans, he might actually succeed. Let me show you what this means in real numbers. PEPFAR HIV program could face 30% cuts. Food aid programs potentially reduced by 40%. Educational support might see up to 25% reductions. Last year, I visited a clinic in northern Cameroon. They treated over 1,000 patients using PEPFAR funding. The doctor told me, without this support, half our patients couldn't afford treatment. But wait, here's where it gets interesting. Many African economies are actually celebrating these cuts. Let me show you why. The Rwanda example, when aid decreased in 2015, local health initiatives increased by up to 60%. The Kenya case study. After aid cuts in 2017, local tech solutions for healthcare doubled. Now the Ghana experience. Reduced aid led to an improved tax collection system. Look at these numbers. Countries with less aid dependency showed up to 15% higher GDP growth. Local innovation increased by up to 40% in regions with reduced foreign aid. So you see, reduction of aid has a positive impact all over the world. Remember when Trump told NATO members that he was going to pull out of NATO if NATO members didn't contribute to the agreed 2% of their GDP? What happened next? Most NATO members increased their expenditure, with some even going above the 2%. In a moment, I'm going to show you how these aid cuts connect directly to Trump's immigration policies and why that connection might change everything for African professionals. Now, this next part hits close to home. The number is staggering. African migrants at the US-Mexico border jumped from 13,000 to 38,000 in just 1 year. Brothers and sisters, that's not just a statistic. These are our brothers and sisters. During Donald Trump's campaign, he promised to deport 1 million immigrants. But then, could this force Africa to retain its much-needed talents, create opportunities at home? Last month, my cousin Esther called me from Kenya. Her voice was shaking over the phone. She had spent 3 years preparing for her American dream. She had saved $15,000 and was already accepted by a top US university. She had even found part-time job opportunities. But now everything is uncertain. Trump's promise to deport 1 million people has changed everything. And it's not just students. Let me break down who this affects. Healthcare workers, 25,000 African medical professionals in the US. Tech professionals, 30,000 African developers. Small business owners, 40,000 African entrepreneurs. These aren't statistics. These are brothers and sisters, our neighbors, our family members. Here's what Trump has promised. Mass deportation of 1 million people, stricter visa requirements, enhanced border security, and reduced immigration for African countries. We have seen this before. During his term, Nigerians faced visa restrictions. Eritrea saw increased scrutiny. Sudan dealt with travel limitations, and Tanzania experienced visa delays. But then behind every problem, there is an opportunity. Most African economists see opportunities behind Trump's policies. Now, Trump can't be doing this for his political benefits in the US, but it's also affecting Africans. And it's affecting us in a negative way, but sometimes you need to push out of the world to come out of your comfort zone. And when you come out of your comfort zone, your production can never be the same. When you lie on the sofa and read a book, it's not the same as sitting on a chair and reading the book. And it's not the same as standing up and reading a book. Those are different scenarios. So taking Africans out of their comfort zone is difficult at first, but in the long run, it's going to help Africa. Economists actually see an opportunity in this decision. Brain drain has been a thing that has been disturbing Africa for a very long time. African governments spend lots of money to train medical staff, but then this medical staff go out of the country to serve other people and leave a vacuum behind. And this is actually going to reduce brain drain in the long run. I'm not saying people shouldn't travel, but in the long run, it's going to benefit Africa. I just gave an example when we started this video about our family textile business. When we were excluded from AGOA, we thought everything was going to crumble. We thought everything was going to fail. But it was a very difficult thing. It was a difficult moment. By then, we were living our African dream. But when that happened, we had to innovate. We had to move to other African countries. We had to stimulate some kind of trade between African countries, and that is intra-African trade. So sometimes when we are pushed to the wall, we take decisions that might help us in the long run. We are actually comfortable right now doing business with other African countries. We're looking forward to divest our family business into more and more African countries. So here's what I want you to think about. Would strict US immigration policy force Africa to create better opportunities at home? What will you do if you had to build your dream right here in Africa? Let me know down in the comments below. So let's pull everything together. We are looking at trade restrictions forcing market diversification, reduce aid pushing economic independence, security shifts demanding African solutions, immigration changes affecting brain drain. But here's what everybody's missing. This isn't about Trump. It's about Africa recognizing its own power. So here are 3 key actions you need to take starting tomorrow. If you're a business owner, you need to diversify your markets. Focus on intra-African trade. Add value to raw materials. We do have raw materials in Africa. Lots of raw materials. As we said, Africa imports more than 70% of what they consume. If we add value to raw materials, we are going to change the tide. The next crucial action involves students and professionals. You need to focus on solutions that will solve Africa's problems. Then we have investors and savers. You need to consider local opportunities, look into African startups, and study regional markets. So family, this is what I want you to remember. Trump's presidency is going to affect Africa in a very, very big way. But maybe this is our moment to strengthen our markets, to build our security, to create opportunities, and to write our own story. This question isn't about what Trump will do. The question is, what will we do? What actions will you take? Share your plans below. If this analysis helped you see things differently, hit the like button and also share with family and friends. My name is Asongwa Lewis, and you are watching Africa Today.